here at Pat Summitt Plaza with Bob Kesling. He's the voice of the Vols, but before he was the voice of the Vols, he was the voice of the Lady Vols. And Bob, you were there with Pat Summitt early on in her career, back in the 1970s. Share some of your memories of Coach Summitt back in that era.
Well, there's one game I think that really defined things for Tennessee and women's basketball. It was 1978. Lady Vols were playing down at Baton Rouge in a doubleheader against LSU, and they played in the first game, and the men played the second game. It was the SEC game of the week, so it was a big deal for the men. And so the women's game beforehand went into overtime. And, of course, there was a hard start for the men's game because it was on TV and the only game of the day. And so the LSU folks came up to Pat and the LSU coach and said, well, here's your option. You can play 5 minutes of overtime with a running clock, or you can play the overtime game after the men's game is over. And so they opted for playing it with a running clock right after the game. Tennessee lost the game 85-80. And on the plane ride home, we traveled back with the men. Pat was so mad because of the fact, not they lost the game, she was disappointed in that, but she thought that her team, her players in the sport of women's basketball was disrespected because of that. And if you notice, it never happened again. And I think that even lit Pat's flame harder and brighter to fight for equality and to fight for the fact that the women needed to be treated equally with the men. And I think that really fueled her in terms of the rest of her career. I think she went on to fight a lot of fights for other coaches that maybe didn't have the power that she had because of that incident and some others. But that's one of the reasons she was such a champion for women's basketball. And I think all the other coaches respected her so much because she would stand up, take a stand on a thing in a position that she felt would help move the game forward.
Bob, thanks for sharing that memory with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and SEC Country.
Thanks, Mike.